And we're joined by Delaware Senator Chris Coons to talk a little bit about the Iran negotiations. And Senator, another sort of deadline has passed with no deal. Where's your confidence level on this getting done at all?
Well, I'm frankly encouraged that President Obama and Secretary Kerry didn't race to try and close the negotiations and end up with a weaker deal just because there was a deadline for a 30-day or a 60-day review by the Congress. Frankly, one thing that I don't think has been widely reported is that under the terms of the bill that we very strongly supported, the review period by Congress after September 8th goes back to being 30 days. So there wasn't a hard and fast deadline here of July 9th, after which I expected that we'd walk away from the table in Vienna. As long as we continue to have the framework that we're currently under, where sanctions are largely still in place, where we are getting a lot of intelligence on what's going on the ground in Iran with their nuclear program. Their nuclear program is frozen, and there is still some chance of a good, strong, and enforceable deal. I'm happy to have negotiations continue. When the president reaches the conclusion that the Iranians are just unwilling to make the concessions they have to make for us to have an enforceable, strong deal, then we should walk away and ratchet down with tougher sanctions until the Iranians are willing to come back to the table and make the final concessions they need to make.
And what would those concessions, for you to support a deal, what does this have to include?
There's a few really key issues that have to be resolved to my satisfaction for me to support any final deal. First is a strong and robust inspections regime. We can't have military sites be off the table, as the Iranian supreme leader has been demanding. That's just unacceptable. We know that Iran is one of the leading supporters of terrorism in the world and has a long history of cheating, of trying to find ways to develop a nuclear weapon illicitly. So we have to have a strong and robust inspections regime. Second, on sanctions, we have to have a system that allows them to be put back in place quickly when Iran tries to sneak out or break out or in some way violate the terms of the agreement. Third, I have to be reassured that the longer-term restraints on their nuclear research and development, on their efforts to develop faster, stronger, better centrifuges, that there's some real constraints on that. Fourth, they have to come clean. They have to be accountable for the prior military dimensions of their nuclear weapons program. So IAEA inspectors have to get access to sites that they haven't been allowed to inspect and have to be able to interview Iranian scientists, so we have a baseline of how far they got in their nuclear weapons program. And then last, any sanctions relief Iran's going to get, they're only getting once they've complied with the agreement. The Iranians are insisting on upfront and complete sanctions relief. I think that's a terrible idea. It should be conditions-based. Once they comply with the agreement, then they should get modest sanctions relief, not complete sanctions relief.
You were part of a group of senators that met with President Obama about this earlier this week. Right. Are you confident that your must-haves are also the White House must-haves?
Well, I was encouraged to hear the president say that he is unwilling to sign a deal where we don't have a strong verification regime, where there's sanctions relief up front, and where there isn't a full accounting for the military dimensions of Iran's program. So a lot of the things that I'm concerned about, he's concerned about. One other point he made that I thought was pretty telling. A number of outside commentators have suggested that President Obama is too eager to get a deal because this is a key part of his foreign policy legacy. He said to the senators who were meeting with him that his legacy will be whether or not this deal holds, not over a year or two or three, but over decades. If in the end he signs and we ratify a deal that leads to Iran getting a nuclear weapon, that would be a terrible legacy for this president, and he's very mindful of that. And Secretary Kerry reinforced that when he said at Vienna yesterday that the test of this deal will be not whether it holds for a few months or years, but whether it holds for decades.
So you haven't gotten any pushback from the administration that
None.
You need to get on board with sort of where this comes out?
I've been encouraged by what I've heard both in these public statements and privately from senior administration officials and from the president. Now, at the end of the day, my job as a senator, as Delaware senator, is to assess the deal on its terms, to read through the entire agreement, to read through any classified annexes and make sure I understand the deal and fully assess it, and then make a judgment whether to support it or not based on whether I support the president or like him or dislike him. At the end of the day, my judgment has to be based on whether I'm convinced this is in America's best interest.
And one thing we've seen sort of sort of a little bit odd for a non-election year type issue. Some commercials on TV,
yes,
sort of urging you to vote kind of against this. Any idea where they're from, or does that have any impact?
Yeah, I've gotten a number of calls and emails from alarmed friends or supporters who misunderstand my position and what's going on. This ad has led some Delawareans to mistakenly think that I support Iran getting a nuclear weapon, which could not be farther from the truth. In fact, I think it is a fundamental interest of the United States to block Iran from ever developing a nuclear weapons capability. The idea that one of the leading sponsors of terrorism and one of America's most persistent and aggressive opponents in the world should have nuclear weapons is just crazy. So it comes from an interest group that's trying to apply pressure to members of Congress. Somehow they misperceive me as being either ill-informed or weak on this issue, and I don't think that's a concern Delawareans should have. It is a reminder that this is going to be the subject of very intense lobbying, both pro and con, if there should be a deal. Frankly, I think the fact that we don't have a deal today is good news. I think it means that the administration is refusing to concede to some of the last-ditch, last-minute Iranian demands. We may well have to walk away from these negotiations and reimpose tougher sanctions to get a deal that's going to endure for years.
All right, we will continue to watch. Senator Chris Coons, thanks for your time.
Thank you.